So one of the things I'm thinking about is if someone were to walk in to One Stone and look around,
Mm-hmm.
are they gonna be mystified by what they see, or does it look sort of, they're in their classes or they're in their thing? What's the vibe there, physically, in
Oh, I think they'd be mystified. When you walk through our doors, it is a very open format. We have a big room called the Great Room. Right now, there's like, boy, I just walked through 3 or 4 different kind of pods of students because, again, they're in this day one of a deep dive experience, but it's very hard to tell sometimes.
Hello and welcome to the Agentic Schools podcast. I want to welcome Celeste from One Stone in Idaho. I'm really glad you could make it. And we're with Christina Kottmann, who's in Brazil. Interesting enough, I'm in Oregon, so we're really spreading out this time around. So Celeste, to get us kicked off, I want to start with storytelling. Tell me a story about someone who really got everything that was possible in One Stone. Like what took advantage of what you have to offer.
I'll talk about a student that graduated in 2020. So, the famous 2020 graduation. He is a student that I think came to One Stone by way of feeling like his previous school experiences weren't meeting him where he was for a variety of reasons. I think one, his particular home life was pretty turbulent. But beyond that, he was really ambitious to kind of get on with his life. He was one of those students that was like, why am I waiting for the real world? The real world is now. I have all these curiosities, I have all these skills, but very untrusting that high school could actually provide an atmosphere where he could try out those things that he was really interested in or really be challenged to be leveled up to say, learn these durable skills now, and you will be able to get the job you want, to thrive and understand yourself if you want to make different career decisions or even life decisions. So started off a little rocky and untrusting, to be honest, but really clicked with his mentor at the
Mm.
time. So all of our students have a one-to-one relationship with an adult at One Stone that typically is their whole time. So you can be at One Stone for the equivalent of 9th through 12th or 10 through 12 or just 11 to 12. And we don't separate students by age. So you're basically here for 4, 3, or 2 years. And if you look around this building, like today, at any moment in time, you probably couldn't tell what path students are on.
Mm.
So he was on a 3-year path and really connected with his mentor for all 3 years that he was here. But it was super trying during COVID, like had some really like big needs for just basic support of himself and his family. We dove in fully. And even prior to that, we had really dove in with this student, really knowing who he was and where he thrived, where the distrust was coming from, if high school could actually be relevant. And he excelled, especially in that last year with all that trust and that sort of extra like emphasis on what he's capable of and the personalization. And he has gone on. He immediately went into wildland firefighting, and then he started college, and he's doing it at the same time. I think he graduated from college. Don't quote me on this. It was either last year or the year before, and has gone into like deep environmental research. So he's starting a graduate program and working as a graduate assistant. This is so beyond what he had envisioned for himself or some of like what his family had experienced in their history of education and their trajectory of careers. And he's so forthright about
Mm.
talking about One Stone, how the key was One Stone like believing in him and being like, wow, you
Mm.
really think I can do that? And us saying and reinforcing over and over again, we sure do. And we're going to show you all the ways that will support you in getting out and trying high level internships, trying job shadows. He didn't hop into wildland firefighting without ever understanding what it might be like to work in
Mm.
fire. Like he had these opportunities to job shadow, to talk to people in that career. And then again, this just support in a 360-degree way where he felt safe and cared for, but then pushed and trusted to do real world things. And I think that he's one of my favorite stories just because he can articulate the wow, I didn't expect this. And now that I've been, away from One Stone again, it was like 5 years now, right? He's like, I'm still using these skills. I still go back to One Stone for believing and helping me nurture management, ownership, goal setting, right? And to do that in an authentic way that wasn't just a cookie cutter, like when you're good at ownership, it looks like this. It was, here you are in ownership. Here's where I think you can be. And these are the things like tailored to you that you could do to show your growth in it. I think it's a phenomenal story of one that I think it's a student that I could safely say probably wouldn't have graduated from high school. Like I would say that there were times along the way, even before he started One Stone, so previous to the equivalent of 10th, where he was like, this is not for me. I don't even get why I would care. And so him digging in and really like doubling, tripling down on a high school experience, helping him in his life was huge.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by ownership at One Stone?
So we have we have a portrait of a graduate that has 24 durable skills on it in 4 quadrants: skills, mindset, creativity, and knowledge. Ownership is in our skills, or like professional habits of work. So we define ownership in like a student facing way as the ability to understand what a student's goals are, to take ownership over planning out, asking for help, and then striving to really evaluate how they're doing on those particular goals. Small goals could be a group project at One Stone. We do that. We do all sorts of different things. They're in small groups today and something called a deep dive, working in groups, to larger, like how you're taking ownership over, like if I go back to that student, your real desire to work in like emergency services, right? So it's beyond just knowing it exists, going through whatever steps are laid out. It's you owning how does that process fit for you. And then along the way, we have all these indicators of what ownership will look like in different contexts, like a student facing view. And then we have this ability to support and assess students on agency, complexity, and context of where they're doing it, how much help they might need, and then also just like the level of, for lack of better word, like difficulty, complexity, nuanced understanding they're showing of a particular skill.
Yeah, it's making me wonder, because One Stone serves students who are at that high school level, how do you work with the parents, especially because they're coming typically from traditional schools?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have students coming from all over. We have students coming from homeschool, public school, charter school, private school, online school, hybrid of those, like you name it. But we do have a fair amount that are coming from more traditional models, either public charter or just public schools. The parents are definitely a piece of this stakeholder that I get asked about a lot. So we have a growth framework that we developed here at One Stone now that's deployed in 6 other schools across the nation. And that's the same thing they're asking me. So I talked about how I was at a training in Pittsburgh, and same thing. All the teachers were like, how? They're in their 2nd year of the growth framework. How do you get the parents on board? And the answer I always say is invite them to the table in a way that's like meeting them with their curiosity about it, right? But then also reinforcing, and the best reinforcement is from the students, how students really grow in that model. So at One Stone, we just had our first like parent night, right? So with new parents as well as returning parents. And we have students talking about we call it the BLOB. It's part of our portrait of a graduate, the bold learning objectives, ownership's on there. We have students talking about, hey, this is what ownership looks like for me. They're telling that story I told of that student that went on to do these great things, and capturing with the parents a student voice of like, here's an example of how this student is activating this, and reminding them it is fundamentally different. It's going to look different from when they went to school. I mean, it just is. Nothing like this probably existed in any high school context. I'm going to be bold and say it, of any parent right now. And what they really want is their students to be happy and confident and cared for. So if they hear from students how this supported them, other students, and then I'm talking about a new parent, and then that inspires their student to also be able to speak up and say, hey, mom, dad, or guardian, or whoever it is, I've been really working on management this term, and I'm doing it in these 3 different ways. That's how you get parents to the conversation, because it's foreign. They're going to say, how do they get into college? Oh my gosh, what's their SAT score is going to be? I always get, but you are doing math, right? Mathematical application is on the portrait of a graduate. Yes. So is research. So is critical reading. It's on there. So I can help. And some of our coaches, we're coaches, not teachers here, can talk about how it does translate really well to rigorous college applications. We've got a 80% go on rate, and an unbelievably high number of colleges have offered acceptance to our students. We're at 185 and counting, and that's a lot because we've only graduated 213 students. Like we started in 2016, first graduating class was in 2019, and they're small. They're around 30-ish, right? We hover at around 100 students. So 185 and counting colleges is a lot of different colleges and universities that have offered acceptance. So I also go there with them or tell stories, and we tell stories of students starting businesses, students that are active in the careers, all the different paths that this supports, which helps them to be like, okay, give me like the proof is in the pudding. But truly, I see the light bulb go off with them. I'm thinking of a parent that was really skeptical the whole time. And their daughter, that student just graduated last spring, is on in college, is actually pursuing a medical degree or pre-medical, I would say, that nobody ever thought. I think that's what parents always wanted, but she was very resistant. And he was resistant the whole time, came from a very traditional background of schooling and wanted the best for his daughter. Eventually, he could hear and see the growth in her. He could see how she was owning her own learning and how she could explain how she was making decisions, how she was thinking about what she wanted from a career, how she was thinking about what skills she had and which ones she wanted to really grow. That's what changed his mind. I mean, that happened way before. I mean, she was here for 4 years. So for 3 years, there was no like, look, she got all these offers to college. Didn't have that yet. She did in her 4th year. But leading up to that, it was hearing from her. Wow, she has changed. She is able to articulate, like with her own voice, what this means to her. And that is where parents really come to the table, is when students can really understand and use it as a tool to thrive, and then their parents hear it, because that's ultimately what they want. It was a long answer. Sorry, I have a lot of opinions on that.
That's okay. Interview shows that's gold, right? So one of the things I wanted to clarify for people is sort of where you're situated in your bigger system of education. So are you public, private? How do you show up that way?
So we're an independent school, a private school, and we have a really interesting model where everybody that applies to One Stone, the students clearly apply, and the students and the parents come in for an interview. We don't get any of their previous school records or their financial information. So we offer acceptance based on fit to the student, right? Then we have a family individualized tuition model where when they're offered acceptance, they can apply through a third party. It's not really apply. They can submit their information through a third-party system that shows their financial circumstances and ability to pay. And then we put that in our tiered framework of tuition. So our commitment is an equitable model of family individualized tuition, where everybody that's offered acceptance has the opportunity to come here and pay in tuition what their family can afford. And we're blind to that before we offer them acceptance, which is the pretty, amazing and can be a struggle part of what we do.
Right. Very cool. And you mentioned that you have some other people using some of your systems. Tell me about what that looks like.
That is what's amazing. So I told you that we're high school, right? The equivalent of 9 through 12. We have it all the way down to working on pre-K through 4th grade. So we have blobs for elementary and junior high and high school in public sectors. So a big public charter in El Cajon, California. Also a public, school districts /school I was just talking to you guys about right outside of Pittsburgh called Duquesne. And then we have a host of different independent or private schools, and we're really kind of coast to coast. For some reason, we're like California to Florida, like a lot. It's very interesting. Idaho, got Pennsylvania over here, and they are small schools. We just have started onboarding a really small school in Wichita, Kansas, to this big school I was just talking about, Bostonia, in El Cajon, California. That's like 1,500 students, and like I said, pre-K through 12. So we've really expanded this. And again, we're not franchised. These aren't One Stone schools. These are schools that have worked with One Stone to develop their portrait of a graduate, their growth framework and BLOB that fits what their goals are, but they're using our assessment model. They still are using these criteria, all of it scaffolded to the age group of complexity, agency, and context. We use some different words depending on the age of the student, but we found a lot of success. And what's amazing is these schools that we're going to our third year of using this in other schools, and we've got schools sending off, it's called a growth transcript, right? To colleges. We have a great college counselor that's been helping us for years now, right? Since 2018. That's when we started applications for our first graduating class. And it's working. They're getting offered acceptance with the growth transcript with no grades, right? It's starting to be accepted across a lot of different university and college settings. And I think it's also being utilized in really rigorous ways in how a student designs their resume or builds their LinkedIn or builds their profile of their career readiness in really, really bold ways. So lots of different education models we're working with right now, public and private.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how you don't actually need a one campus model either. Because oftentimes when we talk to alternative progressive schools, we're thinking about the campus and that holds such significance for making the model work. But the way that One Stone's doing it, you're delivering this framework that can really transfer outside of whatever environment they have, because it's about how people interact. So can you tell us, how did you adapt the campus model that is so traditional within alternative progressive education to be something that can spread outwards, and particularly across the US?
I mean, I think the answer is really simple. By working with leaders, change makers, people that are committed, right, to doing something that's competency-based, that is something that's going to support a student in 2025, right? So those people, it is a fit. These leaders, and then how it gets translated to their teachers, right, or whatever the educators are called in their framework, that's who comes to the table, right, with us to design something that's authentic to their space, and it's authentic to their philosophy, right? So it's authentic to their mission, vision, values. It's authentic if they have, a lot of them have different pillars of learning, whatever they call it, right? We hop in and say, okay, what is it you want your student to do when they graduate from Bostonia or whatever it is? We work really intensely with that group to design with them and have this very continuous dialogue and professional development to say, okay, explain to me what's going on in this particular class. Okay, I can see that this would very nicely fit in these areas of your, growth framework. Let's help. Let's workshop the backwards design of whatever you're doing to make it explicit to these students how they're designing goals and growing in these areas. But it's not us placing something on them, and saying, nope, you got to teach these classes at this time in this way. Never. One Stone would never do that. We are, however you're working with your students, if you've decided that durable skills development is part of it, we're here for you. Let's go. As long as you have already made that commitment, you're committing to real world skills, you're committed to students having voice and agency in this, that we can work around your particular context without a problem. The mindset of this is everything. The mindset is the environment that has to be a fit. Because we've had folks that have approached us, and we've worked with them and talked to them and been like, I don't think this is a fit. I actually think your mindset is more standards based or whatever it is. We've also had some schools that have thought they were going to start with us and then realized, because we're still just in a framework where the standard space seems to be dominating isn't quite fitting yet. And that's okay. That's okay too, right? The mindset is the key piece, and working with the leadership, with the administration, with the teachers or whoever's educating with the students is what will make this a success or quickly be what just sinks it very, very quickly. If you don't have everybody on board and their mindset is that they want this different way of supporting student growth, it's not going to work. If they've already got that nugget, they already know that mentorship works. They know that, or advisory, whatever they call it, they know that personalization and real world and meeting students where they are, that is like the golden relationships that we're looking for in schools. We're like, aha, well, we have something for you. We have something for you that will work to make sure you're tracking this for students that they can use as really good collateral for whatever they're going to do in their life.
Yeah, you're trying to find those value-aligned connections with other schools that might not even know that this model exists. And you're not asking them to uproot their whole system. You're saying, how do we fit the puzzle pieces together to really help you get to your goals? Oh, it's so beautiful to imagine, like thinking about all the schools that you're going to impact around the country and then perhaps around the world. So
we had somebody reach out from South Africa. I'm really excited. Wow. We had somebody from Australia on our wayfinding mentorship last training, which is it's a really great training for any educator in how to be more student-facing, learner-centered, how to be thinking about innovation in making things relevant, all of that. And I'm like, amazing. Welcome from Australia. We've visited a school in Japan, Seido Salon, and worked with their team. They have a group of educators now visiting us again for the second time this fall. So we have gone and have the prospect of going international with this.
Well, if you ever want to think about connecting with schools in Brazil, let me know. But also,
absolutely.
I'm thinking about just so many educators that I know that are doing impactful work like you're doing for One Stone. And they have these ideas that people are not ready to hear. So let's talk about challenges, because you are coming up against, a traditional top-down system that is very resistant to change unless it's been, all these certifications, all of this research-based, we need 10 years of backed up data to say that well-being is important for students before we try it.
I know.
So when you're up against those challenges, how do you keep pushing this message forward and keep resonating it with people who do get it? Because it can be really challenging to think about, this isn't sinking in. People are just refusing to hear me. I have this school out in Idaho, but this message needs to go global. So how do you approach that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I think I said we just had our, new parent onboarding, and we had statistics up of just how dissatisfied, and I had it for high schoolers. We can talk high schoolers, but I think it goes down to younger ages of students too. It's like 80% don't, and this is nationwide, think learning's not relevant to them. They're disengaged. That's the percentage that really, I think, hits people too. Like, does it look like your students engaged in school? I mean, the statistics on the drop off, especially like post 5th grade, are just shocking. And I probably don't have to show a parent that 80% or more of students are fully disengaged from their school experience by the time they reach high school. They're like, no, you don't have to tell me that. I'm living it. I'm living that at home. I already have that. So I start with those challenges, talking about like, hey, this is the reality, right? A lot of students don't feel like learning is relevant to them. And so then they don't really want to do it, right? And then I go into some of the statistics on employers. Employers can't find employees that have the skills that they're looking for. Like, this statistic just keeps changing, but I think it's more than 60% of jobs are unfulfilled right now, according to HR managers, because they can't find people with the right skill set. And many of those skills aren't that they can't find somebody that doesn't have an engineering degree or whatever it is, like a highly technical. It's the other skills they need as well: communication, management, collaboration, ability to problem solve, and think outside of the box. Some of the really 21st century, like information and AI literacy, like that's real. Like, showing people how are we going to tackle this? We're hearing that people can't find qualified employees for their jobs. And I think also the piece that I always point to as well, and this one I think always raises eyebrows, is it's a moving, I think you and I talked about this. It's a moving statistic, but it's more than 70% of jobs haven't been identified yet for a current student. And I think that's growing, especially with the, rapid influx of opportunity and challenge of AI. Like truly, we don't know what it is this ninth grader might be going into. Hasn't been invented yet because everything's going so fast. So I think in a lot of they'll say, yeah, okay, I get that. But how are you going to prove, which I think is really one of the biggest challenges, how are you going to prove that what you're doing works? I'm lucky enough, we're going into our 10th year of One Stone, which is super exciting. 2016 was our first group of trailblazers, is that we've got data on data from our alumni. If we want to talk about One Stone, I'll be like, well, let me tell you stories of these, now 212 graduates, what they've been doing. They're in PhD programs, they're in Spain, they're running companies, they're starting families, they're just able to articulate exactly how they're thriving. We have the data for that to say, I've got a track record. But I think the other way I approach those challenges is, again, to go back to sort of what I said with the parents, is just saying, is your kid happy? Do they want to go to school? I say this all the time when I meet with our families, I meet with all the families sometime through the summer and fall. Say, how's it going? And they say, good, I think good. And I said, do they want to go to school in the morning? And they're like, yes. Yes. In fact, they were really disappointed that you didn't start until after Labor Day, our regular schedule. We have something called a reboot week. That's the week before, but then we take the whole Labor Day weekend off and we start on Tuesday. And they're like, I wish I had school on that Monday of Labor Day. I'm like, don't lose sight of that metric. I was like, that's a big deal. They want to come and learn in this environment. That is already a proof that absenteeism is huge across schools, especially in post-COVID education. Those are real metrics. Don't discount that. And then, like you said, well-being. Does your student, do they feel like they can show up as themselves and they're seen and known in their school environment? That's a real metric. Don't worry about college or career. If your student is not able to get out of bed and come somewhere with confidence where they feel like they are growing, we don't need to talk about SAT scores right now. We need to talk about what's going to help your student thrive holistically as a person. And then the other things I get, I've got, again, I'm a data person. I come from a science background. I'm like, okay, you want to talk SATs? I'll talk SATs. So our students, I'll take them. We take the PSATs. Why not? It's another skill and tool in their toolbox, and many of them apply to college. Some colleges still require SATs. So I'm like, all right, let's do PSATs and let's do some SATs. Our SAT scores on our growth framework really align. We have a line that says ready for college and career success. The critical reading and mathematical application, we did this all in reverse, right? Because I was curious, let's look at where they are on their growth transcript when they took that PSAT, or where I know their SAT scores are, because clearly we see them as a school. The ones that are reaching the benchmarks are at that place on our growth transcript. It works. This isn't something that is completely throwing out, some of those more knowledge-based skills. They've got great reading skills. Yes, they're all doing algebra and trigonometry. They're doing applied calculus. That is helping. So I think also reminding people that the language in which we approach these skills and the way that we're doing it doesn't mean they're not acquiring them. They are. And I've got metrics of that, from traditional SAT to looking at a growth transcript that shows, look, it says they're college and career ready. So I think that also helps me with some fodder of people saying, this, what are you doing? This is way too far outside the box. This is, whatever, fluffy or unsubstantiated. But I really do lean on. So even if I was, if I'm mentoring a school that's using the growth framework only for a year, they can't say to their parents, well, hey, I've got 5 years of this. Check it out and check out where these students went on. They don't have that yet. So I say, well, lean on One Stone, but then also lean on how does your student like growing in these areas? When you talk to them about ownership or how they're doing in mathematical application, how are they talking about it? Are they enjoying it? Are they showing up? I think that's the way to sort of get around some of those challenging perspectives of it's not traditional enough, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. there's so much resistance to something that feels new just because it's unfamiliar. And you think a lot about how in elementary school ages, there's less of a focus on the academic pressure.
Yeah.
Like, I love teaching first grade because we didn't have to do the MAP test. And my students could just learn for the beauty of engaging with content. But we've kind of backtracked, in society to saying the test is the goal. And we should instead be like punching through it and saying, what's beyond the test? What is the test going to prove that they're ready for? And prove in a way that's not really the metric that we're looking for. We're looking at this agentic competency, this relationship with others. And like, that's where it's really hard to measure. But when you see it, you see it. And I think what you're saying about One Stone is like, you just have to visually embrace it and be like in the presence of that moment and say, okay, this is actually working here. I can't refute it. We have the data, but there's a feeling, a sense, a purpose here that I just didn't feel other places. And that's what the students are getting.
Yes. I think, a particular One Stone remark about One Stone students we often hear is like, your students have excellent communication skills because they work with adults in several contexts, community partners and people that are coming to them with real world problems that they're solving using human-centered design. And they're like, a group of students came to our offices and did an interview to better understand what was going on with our company. And I don't know that I've had that much eye contact or direct exchange with a 16-year-old in a while. Like, wow. And they're really good at public speaking because they present a lot. They're the ones that give tours at the school. They're the ones that are, if we're having a conference with parents, the students are leading them. They're student led. So they're consistently invited and we coach them to talk about what they're doing, how it fits into a larger sphere of their goals. And so it's a One Stone student trait is like, wow, they're really good at talking to people, whether it's public speaking or me, as an adult, this has come with my, my juicy problem for them to think about working on. And I think that's another, you can't underestimate that, right? That's a huge skill. If you can conduct or be in an interview, that's going to take you far. That's usually a very key step in getting, the job or career you might want. So I think also, reorienting to what's important for people to be able to have multiple opportunities in life and be like, they shouldn't be learning that in college. We got to practice this now. Yes, keep learning it in college, but woof, if you're waiting until you're 18 before you've ever sat, with someone and either been interviewed or interviewed them, we may have missed the mark.
So one of the things I'm curious about is you talk about agency and ownership, and one of the things that I look for when I'm learning about schools is, do you use climate measures in your data stream, and if you do, what are they?
Give me an example of a climate measure.
So the HOPE survey is an example. Looking at what I'm particularly interested in, are you looking at their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and seeing how they're satisfied? Are you looking at patterns of motivation? And are you looking at types of engagement? Like, are they behavioral engaged? Are they agentically engaged? Those kinds of things.
I think I'll kind of answer it a couple ways. One, we do survey our students to feel like sometimes the end of the earth and back, and we look for markers of both well-being, going back to some of what you brought up, as well as, and it's escaping me right now, the framework that we've been using for the last few years, but I think that we're thinking about changing it up. We do look at their overall indication of how much they think they can thrive on their own. I guess ownership metrics. It's not the HOPE metrics, but it's another one. Hopefully it'll come to me. And so we do find, and then we're also engaged in a well-being survey that the city does that measures things like self-efficacy, which is great. Our students score really high, and they also measure things like empathy. Our students score really, really high. So yes, we are consistently trying to find other ways too of seeing where are they landing in their awareness, their self-efficacy, their ability to understand and own what could be a piece of their future. And then in our particular framework, we really do, like I said, we're assessing everything in these 3 different categories, and agency is one of them. And it goes, from a emerging to a mastering. And along the way, there's different steps that are articulating how much of this came from your own volition. How often are you asking for help? What does that help look like when you receive the help? How do you apply it? What does autonomy look like for you? Are you showing like metrics of autonomous learning in multiple different contexts? And those feed into the way that a student grows on the growth transcript. So I think that we're consistently gathering data and assessing and asking them. We even have something called an autonometer. It's pretty cute. One of our coaches came up with it because they have a piece of their schedule called Flex Lab. Lots of lab talk around here. And it's anywhere between 2 and 3 hours a week. Most students do it on Fridays where they design their time. They have these opportunities to jump into workshops or experiences that are either student or coach led if they're just not quite there yet. And then the ones that are often thriving are like, great, I do my internship then, or I have this deep passion project for this building project in the foundry, or yes, this is actually when I'm spending a lot of my really focused time on like finding job shadows and researching what it's like to be in fire or some other emergency services. So that time is set aside, and the autonometer has all these different like metrics of figuring out, have you gained the skills along the way to where you really are supported just to have this time on your own that you're designing and you're accountable for it. You're using lots of resources to make it really rich. You're coming back and reflecting. You're working with stakeholders to make sure that, the opportunity is both appropriate and helpful. So we're constantly putting these tools, these self-reflective tools in front of them.
Nice.
Yeah, it's making me think how a lot of schools that are trying to do that are going to the hyper-personalization AI-based route. So how has One Stone been approaching the use of AI in an educational context?
I mean, what I think is great, we have a really great deep dive going on right now that's like using the tools of AI, and it's a small group. I think there's like 8 of them. They all chose these different experiences for a week. And they're, I think, just looking at the like ever-growing vast amount of AI tools, right? So that's a total exploration in AI, but an AI-focused experience. And then more on like the day-to-day, in the different experiences they're in, we talk about tech levels. What's the computer level? What's the AI level? What's the phone level that you would expect in this experience, right? So, for example, all students are asked to come up with an idea for a business and to pitch it to some different like business owners or folks in marketing sometime in their 4 years at One Stone. And many students love it and do it multiple times, but you got to do it at least once. And in that particular experience, they'll be like, AI is probably going to be a really useful tool for you to think about. One, like, what's your business name? What's your business like? What are some really outside the box ways to approach whatever it is your business is doing? Like, use it as a thought partner and go back and forth. And then as you're thinking about how would you want to brand it, have AI help you to see, has somebody else done this? What does this look like? So as a tool, we are actually inserting it into experiences and saying, you probably want to use AI for some back and forth. And then we'll say, and then in your pitch, you've got to use your language. That language needs to be coming from you. You can get inspired from AI, like go for it, use your tools, but it needs to be from you, from your authentic voice. You can really convince this panel. So I guess in this storytelling way, I'm showing you that we're all in it with the students together. We're thinking, well, if I was building a business, how would I use AI? I'm like, well, let's think about it. Like, how are others using AI? We're not trying to, we don't have a global AI policy. When we say your words need to be your own, your words need to be your own. When we say, hey, use this tool for editing, use this tool for ideation, we're saying use the tool just as I use it, just as anybody else would use it. We don't right now have any experiences that are just run by AI. So that's not, One Stone isn't there. If a student decides to take like an online class, it's usually a class through our local community college or some other sort of like online certification. So we have those opportunities for them, and they might use AI, but we're not using AI as like a coach or an instructor directly right now. We're using it as a tool for sort of implementing and expanding whatever experiences they're doing hands-on here. Not to say we won't in the future, though. If a student comes to me and is like, man, I found this AI fueled, whatever it is, engineering experience, and it's totally run by AI, and it's got this bot that takes you through all this, I'd be like, show it to me. Let's check this out. Like, okay, let's look at this together. So I think it's like a full, everything we do is student driven, right? We're counting on the students to come to us. And then we're also researching on the back end, like, ooh, what tools could actually help things we're already doing. But thus far, it's a very like collaborative investigation of both the adults and the students together. We're learning right alongside.
So one of the things I'm thinking about is, of course, you're focused on agency. It's key to what you're doing. If someone were to walk in to One Stone and look around, are they going to be mystified by what they see, or does it look sort of, they're in their classes or they're in their thing? What's the vibe there physically, in the environment?
Oh, I think they'd be mystified. Yeah. When you walk through our doors, it is a very open format. We have a big room called the Great Room. Right now, there's like, oh boy, I just walked through 3 or 4 different kind of pods of students, because again, they're in this day one of a deep dive experience, but it's very hard to tell sometimes, like, is that 1 or 2 groups? And is there a coach there or teacher? Yes, there is somebody supporting them, but you're not going to see some adult standing up with students sitting in front of them and them saying A to Z. Everybody's sitting at similar levels. Some have computers out. Some are like, okay, now we've broken off into smaller groups to decide how we want to think of our specific tasks for the day or how we're approaching these next 4 days. But it is open and amorphous, right? And you come over to our Catalyst art area, same thing. You probably see, I already did see, they've got a bunch of materials out. They're already like starting some like hands-on early brainstorming around their project. The Foundry tools aren't running yet, or they weren't at 9, but I bet they'll be running by this afternoon. Foundry's our maker space. And then you come in the back, we have these pod areas where a lot of our design thinking groups meet, but also students can peel off to be like, all right, we got excited about this AI experience. Now we've got some time for us to really go and find a tool, because we're doing breakouts, find a tool. What does it do? We're going to come back to the groups. So there could be a pod of 3 that are back here that you're like, what group are you in? And it's probably a pod that actually started off in the Great Room, right? Yeah. And there's an adult around, I'm sure, but they're not with them, telling them or delivering the whole time. We have a back room called the Nest that does have a door if we need some like quiet spaces, panels meet there, things like that. We have a kitchen where students I know are engaging in some like cooking experiences over these deep dives. They weren't cooking when I came in, but I bet this afternoon it'll start to smell like whatever they're cooking. So mystified. I think you would be like, all the students are engaged, and I think I see some clear groups, but I'm not quite sure, like, is this a class? What's happening here, right? And then, as the week approaches, you'll probably see students leading things, or students giving presentations, or whatever it is, where you truly could be like, oh, I could not tell, like, who's in charge here right now, because there is a blend of different things going on. Today is actually a particularly great example for you to ask me that. Other times, they're all engaged in a similar thing, and so they might all group up, have to download information, and then break off to go do whatever it is they're going to do. But students doing things is like, that is the norm around here, not students passively absorbing things. But then there are times too, you'll see a bunch of students locked in on their computers. They're graduating this year. They are locked in on their essays, and they're headphones on over in one of our little cubbies. I'm like, don't bug them. They're locked in on that essay right now.
So then that leads to the next question. If you say it's so amorphous, how do you structure time and space? Like, how do you actually manage that stuff?
We have a schedule, okay. And we're not actually in our fall schedule yet. This is how important onboarding is to us. So there's the 3 days of the brand new students called Reboot Week before the first week after Labor Day. Then the first 2 weeks, which is Labor Day week and the week after, we call those weeks of welcome. The first week, so it's 4 days, is all about like culture and community building. They learn about One Stone. They learn about our language. They learn about the growth framework, and they learn about each other. A lot of connection, team building. We take them off site for 2 days at an overnight. This time we went into the beautiful Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho. They come back the next week and they have a design challenge. So everybody's been given the same sort of framework for the challenge. This one was around the street here right next to the school is called River Street. And it was about finding some piece of history of River Street and the people and history of Boise that it represents to then express in some artistic expression that also had to be a map of some sort. Really cool. So they all had different like inspirations. They're grouped up and they worked on that for a week. They would come together, all of them, and then split off, and then come together and then split off, and then sometimes be working with coaches on where they were and then presenting. So again, that looked nothing like, whoa, how is this organized? This week, they're in smaller groups, about 8, deep diving into one topic. So we're now 3 weeks into school, right? Next week, our fall schedule will start that runs for about 10 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks. And it has workshops. It's got design thinking time. Then it has experiences that are thematic. And a student designs it kind of like a college schedule. So they will know when they've sort of seen that menu and decided what they wanted to do starting this week, because it starts next week. They will start this like 10-week flow of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, them having these different activities that they're engaged in. It looks a little bit more like, a schedule than these last 3 weeks, but we do that on purpose. There's also some like reframing of what school is. If they see school as a place where they immediately get to tinker, they immediately get to try, they immediately get to be curious, that completely shifts the framework of, it's not a place I have to show up and perform. It's not a place where I have to show up and figure out what's the hoop so I can jump through it perfectly. It's not a place where it's already been decided if I'm good at this or bad at this, right? In the first 3 days, I'm going to have some sort of quiz to see where I am in math. And already I'm not a good math student. And here I am. I've been earmarked that. No, it would be impossible for that to happen in the first 3 weeks of One Stone, because we've got all these opportunities for them to show up and immediately be testing out what they're curious about, how they work in groups, how are they communicating with others, how are they building culture, how are they showing their level of autonomy and where they need support that looks nothing even like what the schedule will starting next week. So they have a trust that, hey, if you did that for 3 weeks, you can come with this mindset to this math workshop. You're going to crush it. It's going to be fine. Ask questions, reach out, engage, say, hey, I'm lost, or this is not clicking, or I need extra support. You just did that for 3 weeks in these other contexts. Why wouldn't you apply that here? And this coach, this coach is fully open to making this work for you. Yeah. It also can be confusing because you know what we hear? When is school going to start? I'm like, welcome to school. It already started. It started the moment you walk through these doors. This is school,
Exactly. I'm thinking about the coaches because obviously with One Stone having a history of, working with all of these students, you have to have coaches who also adopt that mindset. So have you found that you need to help them break through a lot of those education myths about we need to keep them in rows, we need to make sure they're quiet, we need to organize? Yeah, talk about that.
Assessment looks like this, or artifacts of learning look like this. Like there's no way you could have a rigorous science experience without them showing me a 6-page research paper at the end. And I'm like, well, actually most people create visual posters now for that with data on them. So we try to do that. And anyway, some of that reframing. Yes, there's a bit of a learning curve, but we're gotten really good at identifying the right mindset fit for our coaches. Because the number one thing is their belief in students. We try to sniff that out really early. Like, are you giving me clues that you do actually believe students are capable of big things, that students are capable of ideation, real world learning, they're capable of being in professional atmospheres? Like, that's the piece that we really try to glean from somebody applying to work here early on. So our process starts with you submit an application. You get an initial screen with adults. That's necessary. If we've screened, I think they've got some of the mindset. They clearly are capable and haven't either experienced or want to work with students. Then they immediately interview with students. Students interview everybody that works here. So then they get a group of 3 to 4 students, which they can be. I'm like, hey, don't start with what is the biggest mistake you ever made in a job question. Okay. I get it. I love that you have that question. You're freaking people out, okay? Put that in there, but not question 1, right? And so then they interview with students. And even that process, like seeing how somebody reacts to saying, great, thanks so much. Thanks for meeting with us. We're going to set up some interviews with some students and some other coaches. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to have you meet with students. That reaction tells us a lot. And then when we debrief with the students, we learn a lot about how is their communication? Did you feel like you were being heard? Were you being taken seriously? That is the most important part of working, I think, in this way, and specifically at One Stone with students. They've got to be willing to work elbow to elbow. We call it like sitting side by side with students. And if they show that there's that inkling of, I know more, I should always be bestowing or granting access to something, right? Those are red flags that they're probably not a fit. But if they're like, wow, blown away by our students and like, tell me more, I can't wait to work with you, that's the nugget. And then the unlearning along the way, I think, is embracing ambiguity. Because we say that, you know, the reason our schedule changes a lot, the reason our experiences change a lot is because we're trying to meet students where they are. They're coming to us with different interests. So how the heck would we have the same schedule and offerings if we now have a huge group of students that are interested in theater or climate change, or there's a huge group interested in wildlife biology right now? Like, we don't always have that. So we're trying to make it so we are working with them. And one of the ways we do that that's worked super well is we have full-time coaches and mentors, and we also have part-time specialists. And they come in, like we have one right now. She's amazing. She's a biomimicry specialist because we have so many students interested in nature and wildlife, like both knowing the animals and how they can contribute like the natural world to solving complex problems. And she's phenomenal. Like, she mostly teaches at the collegiate level, but she's done a really great job with our students. And like, it's so fun to have her. This is the second year we've had her. And like, she levels it all up. Her chemistry and biomimicry experiences are like, whoa, there's no way we would have this. And again, I think after they've been here for a while and they realize how much, like, oh no, we're actually only bringing you in because we had so many students interested in this. They're like, whoa, that really is the stakeholder. Like, I'm working with them. I'm not, again, like granting them access or bestowing upon them something. Like, that's not how it works. I'm working with them to understand and engage with this really cool topic. And that's been really fun. Like, right now, I think there's like 4 specialists in the building for these deep dives. So they're not full-time staff. They come in for these specialized experiences based on student needs.
Yeah, I'm thinking about field trips and how students are often really excited, you know, in traditional schools to go on the field trip because they're going to get out of class and go visit a museum or get to learn from somebody really interesting. But you're kind of bringing the field trip to them for an entire semester. And they get to learn from experts that they might want to work with in those shadowing experiences later on. So it's really immersive, the culture that you're creating there. I'm thinking about how when you're setting something up like this, you need to make sure you're following all the rules and regulations of the state, even as a private entity. Have there ever been moments when you're worried about, like, oh, we have to make sure we're compliant with that? You know, Don and I have talked before about making sure students can go off campus and they have all of the legality that they can leave the campus and come back safely.
So we do meet all the state standards for different subjects, right? Like, they're all applied, right? Our students are applying their mathematical skills. They're applying their critical, like, reading. So we have English language arts. We have social science. We have a transcript where it's like, oh, they're doing all those things. And we meet state standards and then some, because that's important for them in terms of like academics for applying to college or doing whatever they're doing. We don't have to meet state standards because we're a private school. We do. And then some. And then in terms of like legality, yes, of course. I mean, we're, you know, C3 nonprofit and fully like liable and have everything we need in place to make sure that we know where every student is at all times. All students and parents are consistently communicated with. We have all sorts of abilities to make sure we're communicating if we're taking students off site, who they're traveling with, and all of that. So yes, we do think about that. I mean, that's just good practice working with minors, right? So yes, we're meeting all of the ways that any other school would in vetting all of our specialists. Everybody's background checks. Everybody does multiple trainings and working with students. Like, but we also then give a lot of freedom to say, yeah, you want to spend the day at the museum? Amazing. Do that. Head off site. You know, let's do it. And it's atypical for students to be doing that without an adult with them. My favorite way of talking about the adults in this building is like, I'll show up somewhere. I did a project with some some young female students called Empower Her. I've done it for years. And the focus of Empower Her is to work with like younger aged girls, so maybe like 5th, 6th grade, sometimes 4th. And we oftentimes go to local elementary schools and do workshops, or they come here, and I'll show up, in the van. We have a van called the Rolling Stone, and I'll have the high schoolers with me, and I'll show up and the high schoolers will head in, and I'm with them. I'm trailing them into the classroom to like lead this like informative workshop with these young girls at lunch, whatever. And the teachers will kind of look at me like, okay, do you want to get started? And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get started. They're leading it. I was like, I drove the van and I have the credit card. So I paid for the pizza and I drove them here. They don't drive our van, but like really, that's kind of my role right now. I'm going to sit in the back here, and they know that I'm here. I'm ready. Let me know if we need more pizza. I know that we're going to leave soon. I'm going to drive you back to One Stone, right? That's on me, the adult. But the leading of the thing that they've designed, they're doing that, right? So the adults are there. We're there in all the capacities that we need to be, in supporting, providing inspiration, providing, order and safety and all of that. But we're not leading everything all the time, right? We're like the bumpers on the bowling alley, right? We're the guide on the side. We're there. We've got you. I'm driving the car. I've got the credit card, like, don't worry. Hey, we have some sort of medical thing come up. Got it. I've got the first aid kit. All of those things are happening, but we're taking away some of that idea that along with all that responsibility comes this like, you're the sage on the stage. You're the one in charge. You're the one making all the rules. You're the one that is going to know the most. You're the one that needs to talk to the adults. Like we're really flipping that script so students have that opportunity.
Right on. So let's start wrapping up. And the way I like to wrap it up is tell me a story of a challenge that you faced as a school or individual challenges that then made the school a better place.
Oh, it seems so a little bit like banal, but I'm going to say something a huge challenge was COVID, but there was a couple key pieces that came away from COVID that I'll talk about that I don't know that we would have done. So one is a really beautiful way we approached graduation. So our students that have graduated with their One Stone diploma, it's highly individualized now. Families come in one by one. We did this in COVID because we had to, but we kept this. They come in one by one a couple days before the actual ceremony, and they do some like turn in the computer, do some surveys, some of that. But then they have this beautiful time with the student's mentor. So a adult that's been with the student their whole time, where the mentor delivers like personalized like speech to them and their family, whoever wants to come, about how they've seen them grow holistically and who they are. It is beautiful, multiple tears, just so lovely, right? And then the parents get the chance to say something to the students about how they've seen them grow. And it's kind of like in this, we have a podium and it's ceremonious and things like that. I don't think we ever would have thought of that without COVID, because during COVID, they came in one by one to get their diplomas, and we had the mentors say something, right? Because it was kind of like a drive-through / they kind of came to the front part of the building situation. We're like, that's lovely. We should keep that part. The families and the students are so seen. So that was a beautiful piece. The other piece that came was more like organizational, where during COVID, we really kind of beefed up what it means to be a staff mentor. So all staff have a staff mentor here that they go to for resources, feedback, our staff growth model, some of those like traditional supervisor roles, but then it's bigger than that. We meet with them at least every other week and really just hear about how's it going with your mentees? How's your workload? How's that experience going? Like that was, you were out on a limb with that one. Are you getting all the resources you need? And we didn't have that direct touch point before COVID that was really kind of scheduled. We did it in COVID to make sure we were all checking in on each other. So I think both of those stories are things from a very unforeseen challenge that led us to things that we still do to this day. And then I guess an early challenge is we didn't have a building yet. And the students kind of roamed around, used some classrooms in a local university. I think that did set the stage, though, for things we still do today. We get out of this building as much as possible. And that was set from the very beginning when we didn't even have a building. And we had to move around until we got our lease. Like we started pretty quick. So that was also a fun challenge that I think has engraved itself into the philosophy of learning doesn't just happen at One Stone HQ. We have a great building and we do great things here, but learning happens all around.
Yeah, very cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
I just want to appreciate all of the reflective opportunities that we've had through this chat, because I'm just inspired to see what happens with One Stone next. Like, I want to keep track of everything that you guys are doing. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for making the time and thanks for reaching out.
Yeah, so just before we do sign off, give people the place to go to find out more.
Easy enough. It's onestone.org. That's our main landing page. On there, you can find all sorts of information about our labs school, especially if you're in the Boise area and considering a way different approach to your students' high school experience. You can also find ways that you can engage with us as an educator through One Stone Ventures. We have hybrid trainings called Wayfinding Mentorship Program. Our next one's coming up at I think it's mid-October to November. Wonderful ways to engage with other innovative educators, as well as learn from us. We bring in our coaches and students in that training. It's hybrid, both online and some so asynchronous online and synchronous online sessions. And then there's also an inquiry in there about if you want to think about a tour or coming to visit us. We do catered tours that are specialized to whatever you're looking for. If you're just exploring One Stone and are curious, or maybe you're a school that's thinking about adopting some competency-based like framework, we'd love to host you. All of that at onestone.org.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, Celeste. Thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate your time, Celeste. It's been great.